All right, my first question is, how do you work to meet the language goals of all the children in your class individually?
Okay, in my particular class at the preschool, we are very lucky. We have a student teacher ratio of 13 to 2. So that in itself helps tremendously. So I'm going to speak from that aspect because I recognize that there are a lot of preschool teachers that have a much bigger class than we do. We're very fortunate. Having said that, we start. I know. We just, on the spot, and I got a little nervous. Okay,
okay.
I'll get back to it. So, the first thing, like I said, I want is our size definitely benefits us. Because we have a smaller class size, I can really get to know each student. But when they first come into the door in September, sometimes in the end of August, we don't know the students. So we often we do send home a questionnaire for the parents to fill out pretty much the first week of school. During that week, it's just our exposure to the children, and both my assistant and I will be noticing, okay, this child's got some issues with language, or this child doesn't even speak our language, which is what we had this year. We had a student come to us in the beginning of the school year who didn't speak any English, very, very little, maybe a handful of words, and her native language was Russian, which neither my assistant or I spoke. So during that first week, we notice and observe, take notes. I will write down specifically to each student anything that might stand out. If they're extremely shy and they're mostly nonverbal, we've had a couple students this year who, when they first came in, really did not speak at all. Not because they couldn't, but because they were very nervous and shy and really needed to warm up. So, you're not quick to write those children off. You know that, they have the ability to speak, they're just not comfortable at that point. And then during that same week, the parents are filling out the forms at home, letting us know the language that's spoken at home. If it's not English, are they ever exposed to English? And then we ask some more pertinent questions about the children's personalities, fears, what the parents would like us to know about them, what they would like us to work on, different things, so we can just see if we have the same sort of goals. Having said all that, throughout the school year, we combine the different theories, or mostly different aspects of languages, meaning verbal, written, reading, and comprehension. So if I break it down into those 4 areas throughout the year, we stimulate language through our verbal communication. And that's on a daily basis when we're with the children. I'm with the children Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And a lot of repetition. We do a lot of songs. We do a lot of poems. We do a lot of things that the children get exposed to very early on in the school year. And then by, I would say, October, they're already memorizing it. Same thing, repetition, seeing it again and again. We use visual stimuli to help us explain to the children what we're talking about. For example, when we do calendar, what's the weather, days of the week, I have props basically that go with it, and they're visual stimulation. So there'll be the words. I'll often point out what that letter starts with, what the word starts with, which letter, and we do the sounds from there. And verbally, my assistant and I never miss an opportunity to explain something, always encourage questions. It doesn't matter what the time is. If somebody has a question, we will stop, and especially if it's important to what we're doing in the classroom, take the time to answer it right then and there. I'm very much a firm believer in the natural evolution of a classroom during a school day, and sometimes it follows the path that I have written out for my plan, and someday it doesn't. And those days that it doesn't, you kind of go with it, and it can often be just because of the moods of the children. But if something comes up and it's a teaching moment, we will stop what we're doing, we will focus on that and express whatever it is that we need to express in that situation. So that's more of our verbal. Written, from day one, week one, we're exposing them to letters. we expose them to, we have letter of the week. We start with writing it. We work on their names, recognizing their names first. They have cards that they look at each day when they come in. It had, at the beginning, it was just their first name. We just want to recognize. Then it was then let's write the first name. So then we have not only are we, comprehending that that's the name, but we're writing it, we're reading it, we're being verbal and saying it back. So that kind of puts in everything. It'll help them to do the reading. It helps them with the writing. And it starts off with comprehension and verbal cues. I'm trying to think if I hit everything I wanted to. Exposure to the alphabet, letters and sight words. When they start sounding out the letters, we develop sight word lists. And I have all the words that, for example, what was one of the first words that we learned? I can't remember. Cat. We were doing the first few letters of the alphabet, and they knew a lot of them and the sounds. When you can sound it out together, we can put words together, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, that's a sight word. We can get that, and that definitely helps. Sight, I know I'm all over the place. I feel like I'm all over the place.
Wow,
I'm trying to be succinct.
You're doing good.
I'm trying to be succinct. It's the sounds of the letters are definitely, we start that verbally, and they see them as well. And then they can begin to write them, recognize them, verbally respond with them back. So again, I really would say that repetition is key, verbal repetition.
Okay.
I think that would wind up my, and I did say that encouraging verbal words. We want them to talk to us as much as possible.
Okay.
I think always making time to listen to the child on their level. I don't want to miss an opportunity to listen to somebody. They're people. They're little people. They're just like us. They have the same feelings, the same thoughts that we do on a totally different level, and they need to be heard. So I really believe that when they want to share something, even if it's as simple as, my brother was sick today, I'm hearing you, and what you have to say is worthwhile in responding. So that's also a form of language communication that I'm trying to model for them as well.
Okay.
Hopefully
That
that's
was
number
good.
one.
That was really good. Okay. Question 2. What techniques or strategies do you use to encourage language development?
Okay. That is a great question.
Thank you.
I really like that question. I touched on a lot of that in question 1. About some of the techniques we use specifically about encouraging language development. For example, I talked about repetition in teaching through the poems, the songs, the schedule, keeping to the same schedule. I also do a list of daily helpers, which are the children's jobs for the day. Now they are able to read. They know when I say line leader, caboose, flag duty, calendar, they know what comes next on that list. Repetition of hearing me say it, repetition of seeing it visually is already, they're reading it on their own.
Right.
So that has helped. That's a really good example of that. Of course, like I had touched on before, encouraging language development through interaction. My assistant and I have great communication with each other, and we model that to the children. I take the time to listen. I don't want the children to think that they can't listen to their classmate because they've got something else more important to do. So I do believe in a strong model of listening to people when they want to speak. That encourages language development. Continuing the worksheets. I'm not a huge busy person. I really feel like the children learn more through doing than through writing, but all the different learning styles that are out there, I like to touch on all of them. And so I find, though, that in preschool, it's such a microcosm of real life. And so they're able to be in social situations that are going to be the same social situations they're in school and college, in work, in life, in family. And so encouraging the children to use their words to communicate, to recognize maybe nonverbal cues that, if one of our friends is really having a tough day and is kind of off to themselves and really doesn't want to be bothered, we need to respect that. encouraging them to not just see or hear what's given to us, but maybe thinking, maybe there's something more here, going a little deeper. And again, I think that's done through modeling, through questioning, observing in the classroom. Let me see. So getting the children to comprehend communication, I think, is key to them applying communication into their daily life. And then I think language just goes hand in hand with that application. I really do. It's kind of like that moment. There's never that moment where you go, hey, they got it. But then all of a sudden you're watching the way the classroom's running from the first day to here we are with a few weeks left and thinking, oh my gosh, they have come so far. They encourage each other when a person gets their chart filled for doing daily chores and going above and beyond. They're excited for them. They're learning how to express that. We do have children that are on different levels of emotional understanding. Some children can still have issues with sharing at this age, can still have issues with taking turns. And so again, repetition, modeling, reminder of rules, we have them all up there. Sometimes, some days we have to go back and revisit them, asking the children to explain in their words what that means. Just trying to keep it on their level, I find, is a great way to help encourage developing language skills.
Okay, question 3. How might you instruct a child whose native language is something other than English?
Okay, this is a great question specifically for this year because, as I said, we have a student whose first language is Russian, and we have seen her grow in leaps and bounds. It's thrilling to watch because she knew so few English words in the beginning, and the children were very aware that she did not know the language. So, and I did not make that a secret. That's something to be proud of, that she's in this school, and one of the reasons why her parents put her in this classroom was because they wanted her to be exposed to the English language. And here's a perfect example of somebody who's just exposure on the daily to the English language. So hearing it, communicating, watching the body language, watching the nonverbal has helped her so much in evolving into speaking the English language. Specifically, what I did with this young lady is in the first few weeks, I recognized what words she did understand. Very simple. Go, stop, yes, no, good. I just built on all of that. I would use those words at the beginning of the sentence when I would speak to her. Go, get in line, we're going to stand with our friends, and I would communicate the rest of the sentence behind it. It just worked best for this young lady. She recognized the word, and then she did the act, and then heard all these other words that trailed behind it that now she gets, but at the time were probably didn't make any sense to her. But, and good. So when she started to fall in line and recognize that she was doing what the other children were doing, and I recognized that she was learning to get in line, to sit in circle, to take turns, to raise her hand. Everything, I used all her words to communicate with her, so it was good. And then, she'd get a star because she was good. She started making all the associations. We started with just like 5-6 words and went from there. And she's speaking. Now, I'm not taking full credit, of course, because her parents are exposing her, and we have an assistant, and the children actually, I think, did the most because they were very patient with her. Since she didn't understand, there were times when we would be cleaning up and she would not be cleaning up. She didn't understand that was part of her responsibility, and then she started to learn that. I think some of it might have been personality too, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt, and I said, this is language. And then she would begin to start to do what the children did. They were excellent models for her. So right there, I couldn't write with her at the time, but her exposure to communication and just the language itself on a daily through social interactions really, I believe, is what pulled her in and got her speaking the language. And then it was recognition of letters. and she started to get her alphabet. We do the alphabet song. She's saying the alphabet. She was singing songs about the weather and about calendar, days of the week, months of the year before she was speaking in English.
Wow.
She also was saying the Pledge of Allegiance. That was the first thing she learned.
That's incredible.
See? And all in English, but she couldn't speak it, but it was the repetition and doing it day in and day out, and then she got it. It's a very nice success story, you know, and children are unbelievably resilient and smart at this age, and they just are so like sponges. They just absorb, and it's been a great success story for her, and I think the children learned so much about being understanding and patient with the language for her. So I hope that answers that.
That was really good. All right, question 4. Explain some forms of language assessment that you use with the children.
Okay, that's also a very good question. At this school, we do an assessment about midway in, I believe we started in March. I do my personal assessments along the way. Personally, two of my children had speech issues, and so I can listen to it. I'm kind of in tune to that. But so I do my own observations throughout the year that this one's a little more verbal, or this one doesn't quite explain themselves as well, but they're getting it, they're comprehending. They may not be able to express, but they're comprehending. Maybe they're comprehending and not being able to write as well. I have some that write really well, but maybe don't comprehend it, and some that have it all, you know. So during the evaluations, we consider all those aspects. So we have tests that will have them do matching. You draw a conclusion in sequencing. Here's a sequence, here's a whole bunch of events, what comes next. That is very good for critical thinking. Math, we do counting, not just looking at things and numbering them in rote, but also, you know, here's 12 beautiful, colorful bears. I want you to do them in half for me. Split them up. And now I want you to do them by color. Then they're putting them in, you know, groups. We have the worksheets that they can look at. We also look at their, I'm trying to think of all my evaluations and what they were: matching letters, big and small concepts, sequencing, what comes first in a story. So they have like beginning, middle, and end of a story. All those things help me and my assistant and their parents understand where they are at this point in their age. So I will be able to say, doing great on comprehension, needs to work on letter recognition. So perhaps I showed them the letters and they didn't know all the letters, but they can say every letter, and they might be able to write their name really well, and they may not know any sight words, but they know the sounds at the beginning of the letters. So we measure that. My favorite is mathematics. Personally, that's just my personal favorite, and I do a lot with the hands-on grouping, patterns, sequencing, which comes first, second, third, fourth, so ordinal values. It's a specific assessment that's put to us from the director, is how, and then we lay it out there for the families. And that's that.
That was good. Thank you. Okay. Question 5. How would you partner with parents to encourage their support of language development?
Okay, again, great questions. I love these questions. My biggest, I would say, what I highlight the most, or what I feel is most important when I began this, you know, job and loving being with children with a background in psychology, is helping the children have a love for learning. Learning through fun, you know, not even sometimes recognizing that they're learning, they're having so much fun, and they walk away with a boatload of knowledge. Yeah, it's fabulous. Hand in hand with that, I really am a firm believer in order for the children to be successful, communication between the parents and the teachers have to be there and has to be strong. So I try, and it can always be improved, but I try from day one, these are the best ways to communicate with me. You can call me, you can email me, you can text me, you can talk to me before and after. I have an open door policy. I always want to talk to the parents. if they have any concerns, if you're seeing anything at home that you think is pertinent or that I need to be aware of, please let me know. Don't hesitate. We're on the same side. We're we want the child to be successful. So that's my philosophy. The way I do that is, if there's ever any issues or if a child seems not to be developing, I am in communication with that parent. I won't miss a beat. You're not going to hear something from me 2 months ago that says so-and-so, Sally did this 3 weeks ago or 2 months ago, and I need to bring it to your attention now. So direct, open communication. I can do that through writing my notes to the parents. I can do that through conferences, and I can do that through emails and conversations. So that's how I open it, is communication. And then the second thing is to let them know what we're working on weekly in class, what books we're reading, maybe what our goals are for that week, if we have a special unit on money or time or oceanography or anything like that, letting the parents know that ahead of time so that they are able to cooperatively work with the child that week, maybe encouraging them, well, today you're going to be doing this in school. And I know my parents, on the first night, I told them it doesn't always go as planned, so sometimes we may not get to something, or sometimes we may get to something else. But if I as a teacher, I will feel successful if I as a teacher emphasize to the parents and that communication is key, and together, if we work together through exchanging the communication, especially on my part of what we're working on, that will encourage them to support the same thing at home, and we can have the children have success in preschool. That's that.